Hello, everybody. I am Andra Annette, and this is Lorilet Monegro, and we are Soul's Code. So, we are well rested. We had a lovely vacation, and we took a little more, but we're back. So, today we wanted to talk about something we don't always talk about. So, balancing your spiritual self, your spirituality with day-to-day life demands and trying to run a business and work and balance and all that stuff. So, um, spirituality is different for everybody. I just want to say that. And how you perceive it through that work and the demands of day to day is also different because nobody's going through exactly what you're going through in that moment. So we're just going to have a conversation about how we feel about this and hope that you can relate to some of what we're saying. So Laura, how do you feel about what I just said?
Well, spirituality is quite a subject, especially because, a lot of people think it has to do with religiosity. And, unfortunately, it's just this is why you see so many people attacking each other, right? Because they're so focused on what the religion and the actual doctrines are that they forget to see the human behind any of these different religions. Meanwhile, the universal truths are exactly that, universal. And the premise that we are to see each other as human beings, sometimes it's just like erased. But yeah, that's kind of like what I notice a lot of fighting.
There is a lot of fighting, but spirituality is about the person and how they relate to the God of their understanding or a higher sense of purpose. It doesn't because there are a lot of atheists out there that don't believe in a God, but they do believe in something higher than themselves. Hopefully. Right. So not that's not always true either. But from my sense of well-being, you know, I think in life that we do need to turn things over, you know, and some people think that's escaping responsibility, but I don't think so. I think that leaving it in someone's trusted hands, I've gone through a lot of things in my life, um, not all good for sure, and some people might have gotten angry about those things, but I found that it was taking me to another place, that those things were meant to happen to bring me to where I am now. And that comes from my strong sense of faith and my I don't want to say my spiritual well-being because I wasn't always in a spiritually well. I was emotionally broken, spiritually unfit at some point in my life, Um, and I was very angry with God. And I know that today my life is very different. Like I don't ask God for things. I talk to him about things I'm going through. Like he comes with me throughout my day. I don't just say a prayer in the morning and then that's it. He's a big part, like it's him first always. And some people might not get that, but I talk to him throughout my day, right? And I leave things there, you know,
Yes.
and
I
that allows me not to stay stuck in that muck and in my own head thinking about, well, what if, and maybe this will happen and maybe that will happen. So I just let it out and leave it where it is. You know what I mean? And if it's meant to turn out, it usually does, right? Because a lot of people, I had a conversation with someone today, and he said, it, how could God do this to me? And that perplexed me because a lot of people, when something bad happens, like grief or something they don't understand, they think that a God that loved them wouldn't do that to them. But most of what's happening around us in the world is by human design, not God's design. And I think a lot of people don't understand that it's our interactions that make these things happen. It's not God's ultimate design that someone gets struck down or bad things happen to children or human beings in general, you know? So what do you feel about that?
Well, the reason that, your point is very well taken is because, again, too many people think of God in that form of religiosity, right? Religion, religion, religion. This is why they would have such a finite view of what God could do in terms of having mercy and not necessarily being the one that causes any of these terrible things, right? Unfortunately, many people are not stopping to reflect that God left specific commandments and specific instructions, and none of those instructions talk about killing each other. And none of those instructions talk about making sure you leave the other ones out and take it all for yourself. And none of it talks about all of the different weird structures we've created. None of them are that. They talk about two basic fundamental rules to lead by, which is one, love God above all creation and love your neighbor as you love yourself. And if we were to follow those two things, I think that we would really be very cautious about inflicting harm on purpose unto others. Yet we do it all the time. We do it all the time, daily. On a daily basis, we find all the possible ways to lie, deceive, rob, take advantage of those who are ignorant of something, or do all these kinds of things. And as ugly as it sounds, this is all by design. The same way we keep certain people oppressed, we keep people with information withheld from them to ensure that they remain in a cycle of poverty, limitation, and lack. We design neighborhoods in specific ways that cause specific physical and environmental reactions on the human being at not only the energetic level, not only the psychological level, and not only the emotional level, but at every single realm, so that it manifests even in their bodily health. So we are the ones creating these things. You can go to different neighborhoods.
What
Just
I
get
said?
up and, let's say, New York. I'm just gonna, not that I have anything against these neighborhoods. Hello, we love them, but let's just go to, somewhere where you have to go outside and wear a bulletproof vest versus somewhere where you don't have to wear a bulletproof vest. We all know what happens to the brain. What gets activated? Is it your zen or your run for your life center, right? And this is not hidden science. There's nothing about any of this that's I don't know, like revelatory. There's nothing about it. We all know it, yet we don't change it. We don't go ahead and deliberately ensure that that is not the case. So I think that, we have stepped so far away from the concept of creation, of what the original intent has been, that we need serious revision. But I don't know that we're going to do that.
Well, then we're going to be stuck here for a very long time. So
Yeah, that's why we keep repeating all of the
we're going to be
past.
stuck here for a really long time. I really believe that in life, for us to truly go home and be in our true state, which is a spiritual being. We're not physical bodies. We are spiritual beings, and to really go home to that state that we, you know, I believe we separated from God. He did not separate from us, and that we have to learn to forgive and help one another. And it doesn't look good from from where I'm sitting. Um, but that's another story. But so how do you balance your spiritual self and your consciousness or your feelings about God with your everyday day to day life demands? Because when these type situations come up, and there are a lot of people, we work with people like this, like you were talking about the other day, just a few minutes ago, about people who try to oppress other people, people who take
Mhm.
advantage. We meet them in every walk of life, day to day, and they do stand out. It's not like they do stand out. It's not like they're hiding under a rock somewhere. So how do you deal with that? I mean, because we
Sure.
have to be the better person. We can't move with animosity and have forgiveness, right? So we have to balance that plane and that peace within ourselves to really be that change.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely have to be the change, and that begins with our own inner world. I personally feel that I'm constantly connected to the source of creation, not only through creativity, right? Like my own creative process of thinking and being, but also just by contemplating everything around me. When I look at the plants, or when I look at a dog, an animal, and you look at its parts that make the whole, and you consider how everything actually is by design, then there's no way that I could possibly say that me as a human acting on all of these things around my environment could have been the creator of that. I'm not. I'm experiencing it. I can be a co-creator with that thing that it is already by its nature, right? Like the dog is the dog. I didn't create the dog. Like the plant is the plant. I didn't create the plant, yet I am able to interact with it. So in contemplating everything around me, I feel very close to God every second of my life. Like I can't breathe without God telling me to breathe. I, like it's constant. But I think again that has to also do with the mental premise, right? With the understanding that there's this higher organizing source. Whether you call it God or whether you call it whatever you wish to call it, since we have so many different religions, but outside of whatever the names are, there's an essence of being, right? So, this idea of not just call it whatever you will, but of the beingness, when we are able to connect with that, we find truth right in front of us. We don't need to even understand it much. But we have people that have the truth in front of them and they deny it. I don't care what scientist comes up, they'll never be the ones to make the stars or the moon or the sky or the orbit or the earth or the organizing structure that makes what the universe is. They can study it to the depth of infinity, but they'll never be able to replicate that. Not in their wildest dreams. And so, this is why sometimes, when I hear a lot of weird stuff, I hear it. It could be the brilliance of the brilliant to me, but that's just my thought, right? You're there up there in the sky, you're there up in the universe studying all the galaxies in the thing, and you tell me how how you gonna like come up in one whole sentence and then deny what you are experiencing yourself. And so this is why sometimes you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt, like all these people saying all kinds of weird stuff. To me, they're weird stuff.
But then you have people that are claiming to, have all these powers and stuff like that. So, um, and people think they're all full of wahoozy, right? But we are, and
Explain what you mean. I'm not sure if I'm getting the
there,
context.
there, but there are people claiming to help you step into your abundant life and help you connect with a higher, purpose and all this stuff. And um, a lot of people think that's full of malarkey, but it's really nothing they're doing, period. It's we all have that ability and potential to heal ourselves, to be on a higher plane. Like when you think of people like Buddha, who, and very spiritual people, they were on a higher plane as far as like a higher spiritual sense where they were connected more to the source because they're not in their head. If like a lot of people spend so much time in their head so that there's a disconnect with God. It's only when you find you're at true peace and silence that voice, your inner voice, and really listen that you are able to connect on a higher level. And a lot of people aren't able to do that, and there's a lot of
Well,
people out there claiming that they can help you do that, but
and they might, they might. And there are reasons why I potentially would think that there are people that can do that versus someone who is not there, right? Because it's a continuum. It's not that
yeah,
it isn't absolute. No one is ever absolutely in enlightenment mode, and no one is absolutely in hell. So that's the problem. And that is why there are people that can actually support someone in that ascension, right? Like, for example, I wholeheartedly believe that there are people that actually carve out time to cultivate that essence and to
yes,
actually build themselves up to be able to pivot rather quickly from one mode to another. And that's why they would be ascended, not because they're superior, but they have now been able to taste what a different dimension of growth spiritually feels like. And they're able to say, I want to be there. And they're able to then shut off all of this craziness. Because what happens is we have a lot of hell to distract us around us. Okay. Too many people, and this is always a conversation that we end up kind of falling into every time we have an episode, because the issue is that it's key to being alive and to being connected. If we do not carve out time for ourselves to be able to see where are we in our level of consciousness, right? Because what this speaks to is a person's level of consciousness. I've seen so many unconscious people in their behaviors, not because I would be ascended, no, but because I've already understood that that behavior is a manifestation of a very low level of consciousness. And we have a lot of that going around. And
yeah.
unless people carve out time to reflect so that they can change and say, nope, this behavior is totally unacceptable, then of course you're going to have the Buddhas and the big other gurus and everybody that's out there that has learned to tame that beast within us, right? We all have it, but we also have the other choice. But making that choice takes effort,
A
takes
lot of
time.
effort. It takes a lot of self-control and a lot of effort, and I believe that people are capable of that as well, and that it's practice. Like even meditation, some people say, I have trouble slowing down my mind, but even that is practice. Nobody says, okay, and just sits, legs crossed and so that's not meditation. It is calming your breath and learning to focus on sometimes the sounds around you, just the voice inside of you, whatever. Everybody's different, right? But it is focus. It is, and you really do have to clear your mind of all that noise. And because, like you said, there's so much noise
Too
around us,
much.
and that people are so enveloped in part of that noise, and that it's hard for them to detach. So I don't know what that says from a spiritual sense, because some people are very spiritual at times when they go to church, or at times like given times during the week. But I don't know that enough people understands their spiritual side. I think that I think that a lot of people are perplexed between the difference between religion and spirituality. And I think that's because religion is so diverse, but there's so many different explanations. You could sit down with two different Christians and they will have interpreted, or two Catholics will have interpreted the Bible totally different, right? And they take that and they run with it instead of saying, okay, let's have an open discussion and find out what really happens, right? So, and I think that as long as we're not, you know, plausible, and that we're not open to have those conversations, that a lot of people won't see the need to be more spiritual, right? Because that is being spiritual is a connection to yourself as well as to God, right? Because it's only when you go inside and find that quiet space that you really can connect to him on a higher level, right? And there's a lot of people out there that those Hail Mary people, like when something happens, like please, if you get me out of this will never happen again. There's those type of people that pray when they need something only, and I think there's a lot of praying going on, but not enough thinking going on, right? Because like
Maybe
you
not
said,
so much praying, you know.
but I mean, when you look, like you said, when you look around at the world around us that we're living in, it's hard not to take notice of the beauty that we are surrounded by, and that alone is worth gratitude and something to be thankful for, right? So, and I'm not telling anybody else how to be or what to be thankful
Oh
for.
no. Mm-mm.
But I mean, I don't get out of bed in the morning without finding 10 things that I'm grateful for. And, I say those before I get out of my bed. That's my first, that's how I start my day. You know what I mean? Because, when I wake up, I'm breathing and I can wiggle my toes and I can
Mhm.
feel my heart and things like that. And I think that's something to be grateful for because, we're not promised a new day, right? So
Yep.
it's sometimes it's difficult to practice, you know, to practice this with work and balance because in a work environment, you're going to have different people that were all brought up different and have different opinions about religion and what's right and what's wrong. Not even about
Mm.
religion, just what's right and wrong, because my idea of right might not be anybody else's idea of right, right? We all have different perceptions, and um, a lot of what we carry from our past does affect how we perceive the world we're walking through, right? So, it's so when you have a mix of people with different beliefs and stuff like that, it's a wonderful thing. But if they're not sharing those views and being open, right, to examine other people's beliefs, then there's no real learning process going on, right? There's no um so it's harder to get to that higher plane when you're not willing to expand your knowledge, right? About God and the world around you, or each other. And I find that a lot of times, like, my inbox is always really full, and you're sending a friend request that you want to get to know me, right? Let's use Facebook for instance, right? And you come in there and you're telling me all about yourself and what you do and what you could do for me and blah 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 blah, and you haven't even met me,
Mhm.
right? So I
Yeah.
think that's kind of nervy.
It
And
is. That is
I
very
think
nervy because,
I
it's like the person is just interested in getting their way. They're not interested in knowing who you are, what you need, or really how they could potentially really actually serve you if they actually got to know what you really needed.
yeah. So to me, when I look at that, I say, well, these people are very close because they have a certain idea of how this conversation is going to go.
Yes.
So let me end it here because there's no real desire to get to know A, if I do need something, or B, what I'm really about, right?
Right.
So I did a post this morning saying, if for all the people that are sending those Facebook requests and have a blocked profile, that's a no. If you have something to if you have something to hide, that's a no. Because
Yeah.
if you're blocking your profile so I can't see who you are, what interest would I have in
No,
being a friend of
no,
yours when I
no, that's not.
but that's what I'm saying. People aren't open to being conversation. People are hiding behind walls. People are hiding behind facades. And the only one they're really hiding from is themselves, right? And it's only in that place where you can accept yourself and be like, I mean, Lord knows I've made so many mistakes in my life, right? And that doesn't affect my confidence in who I am or
Right, you
what
have
I'm trying
arrived.
what I'm trying to accomplish in my life. But I don't hide what I've done. I'm perfectly okay with it because I'm okay with who I am today, right? Maybe it wasn't always that way along the way, but I think that so many people are hiding, and I think it's only in the light that we can really go in and be okay and connect with God on a higher level. That
Yes.
fear or that hiding, you know, stops you from being honest on a higher level, and then it does affect your spirituality,
Well, I
I think.
guess, those people who try to, contact someone with a deceitful nature, they'll always have something to hide, and I think that the social media world is a very murky waters because unfortunately you don't know what you're gonna get. You really just don't. Sometimes you think you do, but you actually don't. Even when people seem to be good, you still have to do your due diligence, and that's on whoever is doing whatever, whether they're buying, whether they're selling, whatever they're gonna be doing out there. It is what it is. It's kind of like a vast ocean, and you'll find all kinds of things. But, in terms of spirituality, I don't know. I wouldn't want to judge anybody by whatever they decide to do personally in terms of social media. But in terms of behavior, when a person is not authentic, they just try to find ways to lie, to deceive. I think that there are specific qualities about someone who is not in alignment, no matter what religion, meaning no matter
Oh,
what kind of doctrine they're
absolutely.
practicing. So,
Well,
you know,
but
if they're no good,
that's
they're
kind
no
of what I'm
good.
saying.
If they're
That
no good, they're no good in their intent, but also in their actions, what they do and how they behave and the choices they make. You know, and like you said, sometimes we live moments in our lives that are very difficult. And so somebody may or may not be ready for something, and that's fine because everybody's on their own journey. But
yeah,
what's not fair is to take someone between your legs and destroy them, which is what a lot of selfish people are doing, right? They take somebody in between their legs because they don't have their crap together. And that's really like very inconsiderate, you know,
yeah.
because you got your issues, deal with your issues, but don't go around damaging other people. And people are not conscientious enough, um, which is why that whole level of consciousness, awareness, being able to behave differently, practice more love among each other. If we were at a frequency of love, we would behave very differently, but we're clearly nowhere near there. If we were to believe that any hierarchy of consciousness is reflected in our surroundings, then we would be begging the question, wait, are we in hell? Because we have created um, seriously deplorable conditions when you consider homelessness, when you consider crime, when you consider the different attacks, right? And if these are our reflections of states of consciousness, boy, are we really in a bad place.
But the example I was giving you about social media does say that they're not in alignment. Because if somebody's really in alignment, then they wouldn't feel that need to always sell, always sell, always sell.
Right.
They would that's coming from scarcity. That's coming
That
from
is.
fear. So you wouldn't feel scarcity or
Yeah.
fear if you were in alignment. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I mean. Or you wouldn't be so bold as to pop into my inbox thinking thinking better than me what I need,
Well, you got them like that
without even having a
nowadays.
conversation with me. And I can go and look at your social and it doesn't look like you're doing so well. So, you know what I mean? So, you know, but that's what I mean, that you can't be, if you're always busy and you're always, comparing and trying to sell people
A
on
lot of
stuff.
people.
So, but we are marketing ourselves every single day of our life. When you show up for that first job, when you show up for the, so let's switch that to that for a minute. Is that the first thing you want people to see of you? Because first impressions last, right? So, a lot of people on social media are out there trying to send friend requests, because the more people that are in there, they're well, the more people they can basically market their services to. But I tell you, honey, I go through my inbox, like those friend requests. I have over 300 people still sitting there in Friendland, waiting to decide if, and it's because it's not just my life they're coming into, because a lot of times they're friending you because of what you do, so they want to market to your
Right.
people, your
Other
friends, and so,
stuff.
but
Yes.
if I don't want you in my inbox, I don't want you harassing my friends either.
Well,
These people on my page are my friends, right?
they have no
So,
boundaries.
but that's what I'm saying. So, and that tells me they're not in alignment, because they have this much moral sense, right?
They have no
It,
moral
it's like,
sense.
but it's all about them, and you can't live in a world with other people and be all about you. You really can't, and be in alignment, because you know um if you bump into someone, oh, sorry, excuse me, there is right ways and wrong ways to do things, and everybody in this world is on a different page about that, which kind of has this chaotic world that we're living in, and so much division, right? I mean, you see people, throwing things in McDonald's at each other on TV. I mean, those people clearly are in alignment, right? If you're gonna let something somebody said to you make you go like running to raise your hands, then we've
Got a
really
lot of
come,
that going on.
but we've really come a far way from civilization, never mind spirituality, and that's scary. So when I start talking about these topics, I don't think I'm better than anybody. Let's make that very clear here. I love that everybody's unique and everybody has their opinions, and I certainly don't think my way is the right way. But it does make me question what other people are thinking. I want to know what other people are thinking. That's why I have these conversations, because sometimes I say to myself, what kind of world is this that we're living in? You know, and I do that reflection. I do that reflection, right? Um, that was a big part of my healing journey, you know, having those conversations and doing that reflection, looking at the good in my day and looking at the bad in my day, and then asking what my part was in that bad. I celebrated the good, and I asked, what part did I play in that bad that happened? And how can I change to make that better? That next conversation that I had, so it didn't end like this, um,
Mm.
and that's part of growth, you know. So if I don't ask these questions, then I'm not growing. I'm not asking them because I feel that other people don't have a right to be a certain way, but I don't think anybody has the right to take another life or to do some of the shenanigans that are going on every news station around the world, right? So, I mean, it's not just here in New York that this is happening. This is happening all over the world. The poverty, the homelessness, and all those things. People are being oppressed everywhere, right? And I think that instead of spending all this time in division, we really need to come together to change that. And I'm hoping that can happen. I'm hopeful
Mm.
that can happen. But if we keep going this way, It's not looking good, guys. It's not looking good,
It's
right?
kind of like a sad thing, right? When you think about how we just kind of have landed in a situation in time and space where people, I don't know, you get a lot of high suicides. People don't want to be talked about the fact that there is some kind of spiritual force of any kind. They just kind of want to be loosey-goosey about everything. And, we have to kind of start looking within. I think that when we look within, we're able to then find better answers to our own individual issues and our own questions, and be able to then change our behaviors,
Take
accordingly.
responsibility for our
Yeah,
behaviors.
right. But
So
that can't happen from an outside point. It all happens within to then be reflected out. And it's exactly why we're seeing what we're seeing outside. The outside is just a reflection of a lot of insides. It's a collective level of reflection in the world, and which is why I talked about the consciousness level, right? It's like we're just experiencing the hell that people are living inside in the external world, because that's what they could create, right? You can't create from a point of darkness something that is light. And I think that this is why
very
people,
true.
all of us, need to kind of always, because guess what? We all can go to that dark place. We can go to it on a moment by moment, believe it or not, right? Our emotions shift throughout the day. So if we start kind of becoming more aware and be like, okay, why did I feel that way? Why did I react like that? If we question ourselves, right? Not the outside world questioning us, but us questioning what's going on and how we're creating whatever that is, the dynamic, the reaction, the behavior, the attitude, then we have a better shot at this, at improving. I certainly am no Buddha or no whatever, but every day I
Remember
have
what?
to kind of have to work with myself, and that's why I always come back to it, because there's nothing else that I could do. I would want to work with somebody and help them, but they have to be ready and wanting to do that.
Yes,
You
yes,
can't force
yes.
them.
But we always have to continue on that your
Of
our
course.
own growth as well, right? We can't
Right.
help other people until we help ourselves. So
Right.
it is about monitoring what's going on in here and
Right.
finding that peace. I mean, you can't teach somebody peace until you possess it,
You can't.
right?
You can't.
You can't.
Exactly.
It's
It's
just, yeah.
not gonna, that's why it's all about a lot of, okay, are you willing to put in the work? And yes, there are people that can support us in that process, kind of like the same way you go for therapy, the same way you go for all these different interventions, because it would be a little ridiculous that from a point of consciousness that is really negative, you're going to actually put yourself in a positive mode. So it's like you have to kind of put a neutralizing agent to that, whatever that agent might be, whether that be a self help book, whether that be a course, whether that be someone, whether that be therapy, whether that be medical intervention, whatever it is that you need. Um, so that to me is clear, which is why there are such people that could support us, which is why there is coaching, which is why there is therapeutic intervention, medical interventions, and all the sort. But even that doesn't happen until that person that needs the change says, okay, I'm done with this. I want it, right? There has to be that choosing a different path. No one can force you. Whether that be coaching for kids, coaching for yourself, for whatever, or whether that be whatever intervention you're seeking to do. So that awareness has to come from the person, no matter which way you dice this, whether that be religion, right? The 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 person could be offered every day salvation. They'll be like, I don't know what you're talking about, lady, until the day it hits you. And then you're like, I want it. I'm going to go seek it and I'm going to accept it. And then it's like, oh, okay, that was different. Right. But again, no matter what it is, you can't force people.
You can't. So we're gonna leave it there. We're just discussing our feelings about spirituality and dealing with life on day to day in life's terms and how to hold your peace, right? So we do have to monitor our energy, right? Where we spend it, how we use it, and what we're willing to tolerate and not tolerate to protect that peace, right? Because that peace connects you to your spiritual self, right? So, um, so we'd be interested to hear your thoughts. You could always reach out to Lorilet or myself on the show. We're always happy to hear from you guys. And that's it for tonight. So thanks for stopping by. And this is Soul's Code with Lorilet Monegro and Andra Annette. See you out.
Ciao.